And here we are again. So if you remember, we were talking about the Turing test last time. I don't know if anyone have presented, has prepared a presentation. So if so, please tell me by email. So we will schedule your presentation maybe I think last time, because if you wish to give a presentation, since we have to schedule it into the day, you should tell let's say at least the European early before. So if someone has prepared a presentation on one of the challenges of the last time, please contact me or Martin offline by email, and we will schedule it in the most closest lecture. So next time. So if you wish to present something, please inform us. Let's say half a day before, and take care of the time zones. So thank you. So we still have. Last time we were basically saying that Turing already in the 40s understood that this issue of defining intelligence is not a very simple one. So it cannot be fixed by some kind of test made or by a fixed number of questions with predefined right answers. What he suggested was this kind of game, the Turing game, where you essentially the person interact by chatting, modern words we would say chatting, with a computer, an AI system on a computer, and a person. And the test is passed by the computer program if the interrogator is not able to distinguish between the two. This is the basic idea of a Turing game. We saw that we considered that this for sure doesn't apply to animals. So, and we have an idea, in particular people working in robotics have an idea that animals have some kind of intelligence. And of course, you cannot chat on a computer with a dog, while you can have a lot of social interaction with a dog, which seems much more intelligent than many computers. So the idea is to have this empirical test. Actually, my suggestion last time, and the challenge is still open, that some site of some group of students in some site present their opinion, ideas, consideration on this issue. We know that this idea of Turing was already criticized by Searle with this idea of a Chinese room experiment, because the idea is this one. You may have an English room. You could put a Chinese who never studied English. I don't know how many there are of them, but for sure a few there are, since there are many Chinese. And to design the English room experiment, where this guy who doesn't know, speak any English, doesn't understand any English, is interrogated in English and give answers in English without knowing the language. So the idea is, if I have a long lookup table where at every question corresponds the right answer, the person, the interrogator outside of the box will believe that the people in the box don't perfectly understand any question. And so these people not understanding, in the case of Cell, any Chinese, in the case of our English room experiment, doesn't understand any English, give the impression, first, to be able to speak English, second, to be intelligent, without understanding a single word of what has been said. So this is the other objection. So you may have, if you want, at least two classes of objections to the Turing test. The first one is, okay, and how you cope with animal intelligence. The second one is, what really does it mean that when my system understands what has been told? And this is, so again, there is an open challenge on this, so to do a presentation, because of course in the lecture you cannot go so deep, but it would be nice if some of you try to do that, and in a 10-15 minutes presentation share with us and the other student what they have thought, because really in general the understanding of natural intelligence and the building of artificial intelligence are still open challenge for the community as a whole. So it's not just difficult for students, it's really still an open, there are still a lot of open issues. And so new minds are more than welcome. And then I don't want to go too much. No, so you know that there is this kind of measuring intelligent methods, and I commented last time that this is very good if you are looking, so a person performing well in this kind of test. And there are studies showing that engineering students or hard science students at the end of their studies perform better than the average of a population in this kind of test. But why? Because during your engineering or mathematics or physics students, you solve plenty of problems of this kind. So you are trained to do that. In fact, there is the famous Flynn Effect, which shows that typically, depending on the group of people, because if you are an hunter-gatherer in the center of Africa, you will probably develop other skills, which are, in your case, as useful as being able to solve this kind of games in our culture. But if you continue to do math, to continue to do engineering, this thing, well, it's another effect, which is true on average. Maybe it's not true for me. I feel dumber than I was years before. But on an average, it has been shown that the IQ increase with time, which is kind of paradox. It might seem paradoxical, but it's the training, because actually it's an experience that I think also the younger of us already had. So something that in the first year of university seems extremely difficult and challenging, in the last year seems, okay, well, you don't even understand why it looked so difficult in the first time. I don't know, maybe, but I think that this is true for all, and this continue, right? So, and this doesn't seem a good end. And the other thing that I told the last time is that one of the more debated and scary issue about AI are AI taking our jobs. Let's say AI is taking intellectual jobs and robots taking blue-collar jobs. We will discuss this in one of the latest lectures, but I told you that so far there are in Korea, South Korea, where they have the highest number of robots in a factory. They have 4 to 5 robots every 100 human workers, and this is really the top. In well-developed countries like Japan, Germany, Italy, we are around 2, 3, 4. So we are still far from robots taking over, and this happens in medium, big companies. So there are a lot of small companies performing tasks that typically involve what we may consider very early intelligence. So because what I said last time is that if this kind of jobs which requires this kind of the kind of intelligence measured by the IQ are most likely to be solved by AIs. So I don't know if anybody did already this in any research lab, but I think that it could, at this point, it could be not easy, but it could be possible to build an AI which passes with a very, very high score and very quickly any kind of this IQ tests. But because they are much more regular and repetitive that it seems. So the difficulty for humans is that we are good at doing things like this, right? Very good, much better than any robot. But we have difficulties. We need training and sometimes pains to learn mathematical and symbolic reasoning, because we evolved from the apes, and initially our brain was designed for catching fruits on the trees. So for us, it's very unnatural to do these things. That's why. But for a computer, managing symbols in a very repetitive and regular way is now extremely simple, because we have many computers and we can do many tasks. So it's the famous Moore law that, as you may know, it's coming to an end. But at this point, we have on this cell phone, we have really several degrees of magnitude more computing power than they had during the Apollo mission. So this is still probably not enough to build a complete simulation of the brain. And today we are very happy because at 10:30 Central European Time, we will have a lecture from Florian Rohrbein, which is actually the coordinator of a robotics part of a human brain project, which is a huge project which have a purpose of simulating a small part of a brain. I don't remember exactly, but it was something like, it depends on how many neurons you believe they are in the brain. So in the best case, they will be able to simulate, but it will be much more precise than I can be, about 1 on 100,000 of a brain. If the higher estimate on the number of neurons of the brains are true, this could be 100 million, 1 in 100 million of a brain. And this will require a significant computer infrastructure. So we are probably approaching the moment when we will have a system which has a computing power that can be compared to a human. We are probably very close to insects or very low level mammals. But so still we don't have a computing power. The doubts that many have in the people in the community of AI, in particular people concerned with natural AI, is that we also miss some idea and some insights on it. And this leads to the concept that I just touched last time of a synthetic methodology. The synthetic methodology springs from this from that. So typically we build robots and AI for curiosity, for sure, from the beginning, because actually the founders of AI were moved mainly by curiosity. But now also for applications. So we want automatic responders, we want self-driving cars, we would like to have home assistants. We don't want to do a typical kind of tasks that could be automated, interesting for researchers and students. It's very time-consuming to look for the references. To do a state-of-the-art means browsing really tons of literature. So if you had a good tagging system, you may be helped by AI, and you are already, because when you Google or you use Scholar Google or for looking for papers on a topics, basically you are using Google AI to do a ranking of the most relevant topics. So all of us are already using massively AI. Let's say I quote Google because it's a kind of de facto monopoly on search. But Google is probably the most successful example of application of the AI of the 70s, 80s. Because then we have this kind of delay. So new ideas are typically implemented with 10, 20 years of delay. And so why we need this synthetic modeling approach? We need this synthetic modeling approach because if we want to study natural intelligence, we are actually trying to reverse engineer systems which are way more complex than what we can build now. And they were not designed, whatever the supporter of intelligent design. They accumulated by a kind of random walk in their project space, in their design space, if you want to give this anthropocentric view. So they did, by this random accumulation and selection, they were built. So for sure, they capture things that we will try to discuss in these lectures, but also in a very messy way. So a lot of structure in our bodies and brains are there just because for historical reasons. It's like you must think to a modern organism like as you can think to a city. Cities, apart a few cities like Pienza in Italy or Karlsruhe in Germany, and there are others, have been built by an emperor, a prince, a king, with the idea of create the ideal city. And so they have been designed and built from scratch, and they are symmetric. They have the square at the center, where everything is well organized. Another example could be Brasilia, by Oscar Niemeyer in recent times. But real cities like Hong Kong or New York or also small town, or Suzhou or any Kaliningrad, there are so many, there are hundreds of thousands of cities. Usually they are built randomly. So they build something and then they add something on the other side. So to understand the building design principles by looking at existing houses or existing cities it's quite difficult. So what's the idea of synthetic intelligence? I want to build I want to understand grasping. I build a robot performing grasping. And then I continue to build more sophisticated or more insightful, more intelligent designed robot until I can get to this point that I see my hand, I do the things that I can do with my hand, I can also do with an artificial hand. We are not at that point right now. And that's why there is, you remember that Rolf was a bit worried by the potential hype in robotics. It's true that we need to still to work a lot to have this kind of, because a big problem with robotics is that all of us from the childhood have seen a lot of movies where robots do marvelous things, and we are very, very far from being able to do that things. But maybe not as far as you might think, because I would say exactly yesterday evening we got the final approval of a project which actually aims to pave a way to put this idea that we are discussing here into some real robot. So it's an open issue, but not, we are not Leonardo dreaming of helicopter, probably. Probably we are but dreaming of trains. So we might be much closer than we think. So the synthetic approach is using robots for science. You believe that there is a perception mechanism acting in the brain. You build a simulation of a brain, like Florian and his collaborator does. You put it on a machine and you see what happens. Of course, there are a lot of issues, but this is the approach. And for sure, what you will get is something which is much simpler than what you have in nature. Because what is in nature, and then after that you understand the principle, you can go back to real bodies and to discover that maybe some muscle here is not really needed, but it comes from the fact that before this was not an end. No? And yeah, there are some biologists that could help us in this. No? And so I will now go a bit faster because I don't want to take too much time from the others. So this idea of a robot is not, and these are not, those that you see are not the oldest robots that you can think of. These are some very nice robots which were built in Switzerland at the end of 18th centuries. There were more simple systems built even by the Greeks, by Xectibius or Aaron of Alexandria. Many years. And the interesting thing is that this automaton that is still displayed in Neuchâtel in a museum is able can be programmed to write with a pen, so with a good calligraphy, short phrases up to 40 words. It can be programmed. And if you look to the picture, what it is essentially gears and pulls and levers, nothing more. Very, very complicated, but there is what in modern term would call a state machine, so an algorithm, if you want, written with gears and levers and other mechanical equipment. So the idea of having a state machine, an algorithm, which connects directly to some actuator to do useful thing is not new at all. So it's actually there, as being there from the Greek times, and they already have some marvelous application in Switzerland or in Japan. For instance, these karakuri dolls are again wood and structure able to do things. So you can, the purpose is to make people believe that this is alive. This karakuri, an illustrated anthology, which was published in 1796, is actually the ancestor of the Handbook of Robotics. So this is a Japanese book displaying you see, for instance, they explain, unfortunately, I don't understand Japanese, but yeah, I can easily imagine that I see the drawings, you can see the drawings, And this is the explanation how to build that kind of machine, no? Because on one side we have the puppet, and on the other side you have the internal mechanism. So where is the novelty then in modern robots like Pepper or Asimov? The novelty is that, of course, if you, with gears and levers and pulleys, you can calculate many sophisticated. If you really build a very complex mechanical structure, you can do something, but never that can be compared to a computing equipment. So the real difference is quantitative. So you can do much more. The issue here is that is this are those more powerful systems enough to have something significant different? Because if you look at one of those machines, you can be fooled for some time, but then you understand that there is a machine. This is exactly what happens to babies playing, children playing with robots. Children playing with robots in the first phase are enthusiastic. Of course, they are more easily fooled than adults. But really, like us, initially they believe, this is alive. But then they understand that the repertoire of behaviors is fixed or is much more regular than the repertoire of a human or even a small or of a cat. And then they lose interest. This doesn't happen with cats. So this could actually hint to the limit of this approach of state machine plus mechanical actuated system, which is at the basic this what modernly is called mechatronics. So connecting a computer to by electrical motors to a piece of steel. This is the basic of computing, of robotics. There is a lot more, but I want to finish with some comment on this Van Kampelen's chess player. Again, so because there are waves of enthusiasm for technology. We are for sure living one of those waves. At the end of the 18th century, for some times there was this mechanical Turk playing chess. And it was a tremendous success in Europe. So this Van Kempelen chess player traveled all the way around Europe. And everybody was excited by this system. How they could play chess in that era? Well, there was a robot like the Neuchâtel robots, by the Drotz brother robots or the Karakuri dolls, and the moves were decided by a small man hidden into the machine. No? And where is why I like very much this, because today we could build this system without putting a person into the machine, because we have, as you know, the world champion of chess is a computer. So today this could be solved. In those times they were able to build the mechanics in a quite realistic way, but they didn't know. But this is chess. I don't want to insist on this. Okay, you may. I think we may finish here my part today, and I suggest you to look in YouTube or Yoku or around on the internet for two things. One is the Asimov falls from the stairs video, and the other is the inner life of a cell, which was prepared based on real scientific data to explain how a cell works by a group at Harvard. And I finish here, and we can have 5 minutes break until 10:10 Central European Time, so 5 minutes from now. And then Martin Stolen will introduce the koans to everybody. Thank you. If you have questions, maybe we have time for one question.
Okay, Fabio, I'm setting up here. How much time do I have? Sorry, I think your mic still can't hear you. I think your mic is muted. Okay.
Sorry. Yes, I had muted me. Yeah, but you see it.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah, brilliant. Okay, should I then try to share my screen? I think you have to stop sharing, Fabio, and I can share it. Okay. So Fabio, I still see your screen. I need to be able to share. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, got it. Share my screen. Okay. So, can you see that okay? Okay, I can't hear you again, Fabio. Fabio? No,
Sorry. Yes.
Okay.
Please go ahead. When you are ready, go ahead.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to be presenting the 2016 group project koans. So this is a yearly thing. Every year we do koans with the ShanghAI lectures, and this is a way for the students to, as Fabio said, attempt some really challenging topics, get a feel for kind of applying some of the things that you learn in class. And every year we have then a set of koans, and you will choose between these koans and be assigned into groups. So I'm presenting today from India, from New Delhi, because I've been here to present a robot called the Gummy Arm at the India-UK Tech Summit. You can see the robot on the right here is a kind of strange-looking thing. It's a soft arm in that it has these orangey bits that are soft tendons, and it can also vary that's the stiffness of those joints. And it's 3D printable and open source, so you can actually go and download it and print it out yourself. And we were lucky enough to have the High Commissioner, the British High Commissioner to India, give the robot a handshake. So the demo we did was that actually people could come up and actually give the robot a handshake. The robot then would close the hand and move the hand so they could feel what a soft robot feels like. That's why I'm here.
Martin will present. Martin, sorry. I want to tell everybody that Martin will present this robot to everybody in one of the later lecture as a guest lecturer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we'll try to fit that in somewhere. Yeah, so a koan then, according to Wikipedia, is a story, dialogue, question, or statement which is used in Zen practice to provoke the great doubt and to test the student's progress in Zen practice. So if you are a bit confused when you read these koans, or if you have some doubt about whether you can actually do it, that's probably okay, that's healthy. These are, as we said, very challenging topics, but we're hoping that by challenging you and making you think hard about it, you will gain some new insights. And us as well, because we don't know the answer to all of these. So it's very much open questions, okay? Don't feel like there's one correct answer to these. In the past, we've had a bunch of really cool projects. There's been work on quadruped robots, which will also continue this year. There's been work on evolution of body and brain, which is something we stress through this lecture. And there's been work on soft, all kinds of soft things, soft hands, etc. Simulations in WebBots, which is a simulator that you can access through this course if you need to. There's also other simulators you can use, but that's the one that's supported us. Cyberrobotics has been supporting us in the past, and we can get licenses for that simulator. There's been up in the top right corner there, you see there was an optimization of a manta ray wing and the passive dynamics of that manta ray wing in a fluid. So a bunch of kind of strange and interesting topics and some of them have lived on afterwards to kind of become publications and other things. And we're really hoping you can also this can be the start of something you can build on afterwards, and maybe you can also build on some of the stuff that was done in the previous years in the ShanghAI lecture, so you don't have to start from scratch. So there is a bunch of resources. There's a timeline and grading on the koans page on the website. So I'll just try to switch over there now. Hopefully this will work. So if I go here, so can you see this page okay? Fabio?
Yes.
Okay. So you can see on the top here, you have the timeline, which is of course subject to change. This is a kind of this is the preliminary timeline. So we published the koans today. The deadline for registering and selecting a koan is for now the 15th of November, so in 5 days from now. We'll then publish student groups on the 17th of November. And then there's two main deadlines. On the 14th of December is the preliminary design report. I'll get back to that. And on the end of January, the group presentations. The grading scheme then, I hope you can see this okay. Try to make it a little bit bigger. Oops, there you go. Grading scheme. First of all, the preliminary design report is 25%. This could be, you can set up we encourage you to set up a repository wiki on, for example, GitHub or GitCafe. That could be your preliminary design report, or you can hand in a 4-page report. So this would be ideas, any plans you have for the next couple of weeks, and then how far you've gotten. And this will be graded by your tutor. Each group will have a tutor assigned. Okay, so I'm hearing some feedback, so make sure you mute your mics everywhere. Okay, thank you. Group presentations will be 75%. This is via video, Google Hangouts, or something similar. We are very flexible on this, whatever tool you want to use. But it's basically the group coming together, presenting like we do today over a video client, and it's evaluated by a panel of tutors and professors, etc. On the bottom here, you have resources. You have a link to the presentation that I'm giving today in Google Documents. Hopefully all of you can see that. If you have problems seeing it, then I will also make a PDF version of it, and I can put it on the website. I'll do that after this lecture. And you can see the 2050 koans. There's a link to that as well. Okay, so I'm switching back to the presentation now. Hopefully you can see this. Let me know if you can't. So I'll start with the different koans, quickly go through a little bit about each. So koan 1 is about wearable soft robotics. So if you imagine that our clothes can start adapting to us in different ways or helping us in different ways, then of course that becomes some kind of wearable soft robot. Some of you probably seen Back to the Future Part 2. You have here Marty McFly with a self-adjusting jacket. Quite cool. So soft robotics provide tools for making safe and controllable wearable devices. So design 1, try to fabricate a prototype. Last year we had a very interesting one. It was a kind of self-closing cape, as it were. When it got cold, the cape would close, and when it got warmer, it would open. I'll actually put some links to those previous projects on these pages. So this document is also a living document. It will keep evolving as we get more information. But there's some good places. There's some good places you can start already now. The Soft Robotics Toolkit. There's some other tutorials, etc. And there's links there. And think about how the soft mechanism is coupled with the human body, how you can actually control it with the human body, and how it's useful for the user, and how is this related to the lecture topics that we go through. Koan 2 then is about throwing robot with elastic energy storage. So as you know, if you want to throw something a long distance, you typically don't start with your arm in kind of the back position. You start at the front, you then move backwards, and then start kind of reverse the direction and release with a very high velocity. And the reason we can do that is that we can do elastic energy storage in our muscles and tendons, which enables us to throw long distances. This koan is about trying to do this in a robot. You can see a little example, the QB Move based 2DOF robot. There's a little YouTube link there that does something like that. And that is whether you can do something like this, something better, perhaps more human-like, and perhaps you want to do another task where an elastic energy storage is useful, like hammering in a nail. And basically, we want to design and build a robot arm that exploits this elasticity to move faster than the actuators are actually capable of moving by themselves, and also possibly compare with human motor control literature. I mean, this sounds extremely complicated, okay? But you can start with something very simple. If you have a 3D printer on campus, you can start printing out something simple, maybe 1 or 2 degrees of freedom, and just playing around with rubber bands, etc. So it can be quite simple to start out with. Koan 3 is called From Passive to Actuated Dynamic Walking. So we will see in this lecture that there is something called passive dynamic walkers, which are able to exploit their own intrinsic dynamics to generate very energy efficient gaits that also look very natural. They are quite limited in that they typically have to walk downhill or have some added. They don't typically have actuators, as it were. They can't typically avoid obstacles on the surface. So this Koan is about, can you add actuators to such a robot? An example on the right here is the Cornell Ranger, which is actually able to walk 65 kilometers on one charge, which is much longer than a typical humanoid robot would be able to walk on one charge. And then think about sensors on the sole of the fleet, reflexes, etc. And if there are any interesting, I'm sure there are, applications in the real world for very energy efficient walking. And there's a link to the paper for the Cornell Ranger in the lower right corner. Again, this could be simulated or it could be built in real life. I put on each slide here that if you have other ideas, if you want to do something slightly different or completely different, you can. We really encourage you to be creative on these Koans. Koan 4 then, a soft touch. So as you know, if you want to pick something up, let's say picking up this battery here, if you have a completely, as Rolf demonstrated very well last week, if you have a completely rigid surface, it's extremely hard to pick up something reliably because you have a very small point of contact and low friction with the thing you're picking up. So it helps to just have a smooth, kind of soft skin when you want to pick something up. So can you design a soft hand or arm and explore different degrees of passive compliance? This could be, for example, modeled in VoxCAD. We had some students doing that last year. I'll put up a link to that project actually. So VoxCAD is a little CAD tool that enables you to model very soft structures. This is quite hard to model in normal CAD and simulation software. And think about what objects can we grasp when, if my hand is soft, I can really just let my hand drop on top of it and then close the fingers and typically I'll be able to pick up whatever is there, explore how many actuators you need, and discuss, this is very important, how what is the impact of this softness on the complexity of the controller that you need to control this hand and the movement planning required. Excuse me, I have a bit of a cold. So Koan 5 is a variable stiffness actuator with supercoil polymers. So this is very state-of-the-art stuff. If anyone feels like they want to take up the challenge, so if you want to design something like a humanoid type hand, it's quite hard to get all those actuators into the hand and the forearm because you have a lot of degrees of freedom in our hand. There's an alternative to the kind of traditional electric motors, which are called supercoil polymers, which have low cost and weight, high strength and speed, and also some compliance and damping. So they become kind of like springs. And they're very simple to make in theory, in that you can literally just take some nylon fishing line and start twisting it, and as you coil it, you'll start supercoiling, as you see in the pictures here. So coiling in different directions around itself, and then it becomes a supercoil polymer, which has these properties. And you can then heat it up or cool it down to make it contract or expand. So have a look at what you can design, maybe a couple of degrees of freedom finger maybe with such an actuator, and explore what you can do with it. And particularly you need to think about how do you heat it up and how do you cool it down. And you can look at some of these. There's 2 papers on the bottom here that you can take inspiration from. Koan 6 is a variable stiffness and 3D printable snake robot. So snake robots are actually quite useful and have been proposed for tasks in hard-to-reach areas. So if they need to get through a pipe or some small constrained opening, for example, in nuclear decommissioning jobs, underwater inspection. So search the relevant literature to take inspiration from the skeletal muscular structure of snakes and explore what the role of stiffness variation is for water and land snake locomotion. There isn't that much information on this, so if you're able to build a variable stiffness snake, you might be able to help provide some additional insights here into whether variable stiffness is useful in the snake. You can take inspiration from this QBMove-based variable stiffness snake on YouTube, and also this great TED Talk on a soft salamander. This could, again, be 3D printed. I think that probably would be the easiest, but potentially also simulated. So this salamander you see on the right is actually also simulated in WebBots, if you're interested in doing that. Quan 7 is attractor states as the basis for symbol grounding. So we'll learn about in this course that if you have a system with some passive compliance and some simple oscillatory movements, the system can fall into kind of stable attractor states in the dynamics, which means that you will, for example, have a gallop or a trot. If you talk about a quadruped robot, there is a very nice little robot, open source robot that you can use to explore this, and it's called the Puppy. It's available on GitHub. You can download it, print it out, and we had actually 2 groups doing that last year in Plymouth and in Berlin. You can see the 2 pictures on the slide here, and you can then start exploring going from, so last year we were able to build these platforms. Maybe this year we can go even further and try looking at whether we can try to categorize gates based on the sensor input. Look at why such a platform would need to change its gate. Could it be due to environment? Could it be due to intrinsic motivation, etc.? Opportunities are limitless. But if you have a 3D printer, this is a really great little project. It doesn't take long to print out. You need a couple of servos and batteries, but it's not a big cost. And you can quite quickly build a platform that you can play around with. Also, for reference, have a look at the book. Have a look at the book for the course, How the Body Shapes the Way We Think, to read a bit more about attractor states, etc. Put links to the repository. Yeah, they're there on the lower right corner. So you can find all the information you need on this slide. Quan 8 is about learning how to swim like a fish. So if you were to discover a fossil like the one you see on the right here of some extinct species, this is a animal called haiku, I can't even pronounce that, haiku-chis, which lived 525 million years ago. If you just find this fossil, it gives you kind of a limited insight on how it actually lived and moved. So maybe if you're able to now instead build this a working model of this fish or animal, can you learn something more about how it's able to swim efficiently? So you probably need to both design it and have some machine learning algorithms or something similar, or maybe just sinusoidal kind of pattern generators, and you can either build it, which would be quite challenging to be honest, or simulate it. There's a couple of simulators links on the slide here. And see if you can gain some insight into the way an extinct fish swam. Quan 9 is about robot collaboration using kind of simple local rules. So if you have you see the pictures on the right, you see a flock of birds or a school of fish. Can you try to simulate this in a simulation and have this type of behavior emerge using simple behaviors such as move in the same direction as your neighbor, remain close to your neighbor, and avoid collision with your neighbor? Or if you have other ideas, implement your own rules. So this is quite an open one. You can probably want to do this in simulation, and there might be events that trigger a reaction. There could be response to a predator attack or response to food, etc. So this is another interesting Quan. Quan 10 then is basically if you looked at all the previous Quants and didn't find one that kind of fitted what you would like to explore, maybe you're not so interested in building something physically, you're more interested in looking into the philosophical aspect, into the theoretical aspect, feel free to define your own Quan and suggest it to us. So basically just send us an email, and then we will try to work with you to get this Quan defined, and then we see if there's other students that might also be interested. There's just 2 conditions. It must be related to the topics covered in class, and the group must be open to all students. Right, so that's all the Quan kind of you can select from. In terms of group allocation, these will be assigned according to your preference. So it'll be a maximum 5 students per group, and we also aim to make these groups as international as possible. We do encourage hardware solutions. So, for example, using 3D printing. I think most universities these days have 3D printers because they are so low cost. But you don't have to use hardware, of course. And if you do use hardware, in particular, we are absolutely okay with each group having a local core of students, or a number of students from one site working together. That makes it a little bit easier. And then I think the last point there is quite important. I think you really, to do these koans, you really need to try to think outside the box. And there really is no correct answer to any of these koans, I believe. So it's up to you what you make out of it, and we're looking forward to seeing what you can do in a sense. So the to-dos then for the students from today is to read through the details of the different koans that I just went through. So this presentation is available from the website under the koans tab. It's a living document, as I said, so it might be updated as we go along. I might add a bit more links on each of them, but the main topics will remain as they are. And then register for participation in the koan. So the student registration is now open, and you can do that through Eventbrite, or click here, or look on the website, and then just select your preferred koan when you're prompted for it. If anyone has already registered, you might be able to go back to the registration and select this again, because I didn't have this option in there before. If you can't find it, just send me an email and I'll assign you to a certain whatever koan you would like, and then you'll be assigned a certain a group and a tutor. And I think that's all I had. So back to you, Fabio, or if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them now.
Okay, maybe now it's better if people having questions raise their questions, particularly students. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Any question or comments on the koans? So maybe you have been astonished and frightened by the koans, but intentionally, from the etymology of koan, they should provoke the doubt that you maybe even if you guess if you are at the right place or something like that.
Yes.
So okay. Anyway, I think that we, Martin and me, will be happy to answer to any question.
Absolutely.
Later on, also in written form by email, if you are interested. I continue. I finish the lecture, so we will continue about 10 minutes. Taking something for next. We will schedule. Florian's talk on another day. I'm sorry, but it seems that he has problem in connection. He enters and in and out from the video conference. So this seems a technical issue, and we will try to fix before next lecture, because it could surface again. So I'm now sharing my screen, and I will. Finish the lecture. I'm sorry. So I had to prepare some slides at the last minute, so please. We were here, right? So I was challenging the student to look for these videos, or could also be as well, if not better, to do this kind of exercise for the experiment. What's also looking at the koans? What's the difference between a sophisticated robot and of your choice and the way living system behave. Those two videos that I'm suggesting, I think they are very expressive. But if you can come out with other example, video is better, but also thinking and text is okay. You can book a talk, and you can do your presentation. So we can schedule in one of the coming lecture the presentation. So please do it, because it's very useful to listen to your peers. And so I understand this is an effort, but I think it is worth. So you don't have necessarily to use these videos. Other videos are even better. If they are really cool, you will have the honor of seeing them in the next edition. So it's a big prize. I just had a few remarks that actually were meant for one of the next lecture, but I just don't want to lose the whole time that it was dedicated to Florian's lecture. So this is the situation now. When I dismiss that good old-fashioned robotics, mechatronics approach to robotics, you must put my words in context, because I'm not saying that kind of technology, which is booming right now, is not useful. If you look at these slides, you see some probably conservative estimates on the growth of the robotics market that has been done by Spark and by EU Robotics, which is an entity, a public-private partnership, which manage the roadmap-based research in Europe. And you see that we expect high growth rates, and we expect them with this good old-fashioned approach, because after that for many years we have seen basically many robots in the factory, but doing always the same thing. So typically welding, some kind of painting, and typically in auto factory or in home equipment factories. And now the situation is changing, because there are first of all, we have more computing power, but then we have probabilistic approaches which are put on top of mechatronic machines, and we have connectivity with the Internet of Things, and we will have 5G soon, in a matter of a few years, which will essentially give you a huge fiber, so a connectivity bandwidth comparable to that of most of current fiber connection on your phone, and so on your phone means also on your robot. So your robot, it will be possible to connect the robot to a huge server behind the scenes, and to use that computing power to do calculation. And actually, machine learning is also about a lot of calculation. So you need computing power for efficient and effective machine learning system. And so we are already living a revolution, right? If you look at this screen, at this slide, essentially we can see the development of robotics in this way, as a succession of three big waves. The first wave is that of a modern pioneer. So we don't consider here the previous example about conceptually connecting a computer to a mechanical device and controlling by numbers, the drivers, is the same thing that they did in the Karakuri dolls, or even some very ancient Chinese example, or Greek example. And so the first wave is start in modern time in the 60s with the first application of robots in the factories. And essentially they are arms made of steel, controlled by electrical motors and a microprocessor. The technology used in this case are some simple computer science. We are in the 60s, so in those times for the Apollo program, they had much less computing power than they have here. In those times, they also started, in the 60s, they started to build the first robot, to put the first robots in the factories for real jobs, so not research, really doing things in factories. The first installation was in the 64, I think, in General Motors. So this was, and what they used was some basic control engineering, some basic computer science, and of course a lot of mechanical engineering, because you have to build two pieces of steel to put a joint here, to put a motor here. And so this is what they did. And this is what we call the first wave. I would say about end of the 90s, and for sure now, beginning of this century, we have what we call the second wave, where a typical example of a second wave is the Google self-driving car. So it's not anymore something staying in a factory and doing some programmable, because welding robots can be reprogrammed to do a different welding on different points. So they are not, so you don't, the main difference, if there is a difference with the Karakuri dolls, the Karakuri dolls can be reprogrammed, but you have to change the mechanics. In a computer, you change the program. This is lengthy, it requires a lot of time, but can be done. Now we are starting to introduce probabilistic robotics, machine learning techniques, and some kind of AI Google style, if you want, or also symbolic kind of AI to do small reasoning. And this is the second wave. The enthusiastic growth perspective that I have shown you in the previous slides are related to this second wave. And then when what we are talking about in the koans, and what we will talk in these lectures, and we are talking in this way, is that what we think will prepare the third wave, but you can consider the wave of a deep bio-inspiration, not just copying this arm, but understanding the principle. That's why it's important, the challenge of looking, for example, of biological systems performing tasks and robots performing tasks, because we believe that the next wave, so the wave of robotics, which will allow to build the robots of science fiction, maybe not conscious, but doing very, very complex tasks, will be enabled by deep bio-inspiration, which means understanding exactly what we are talking here in these lectures. Self-organization, morphological computation, meaning that the body performs, so this idea at the basis of robot, of Pfeiffer's book and of other similar books. The idea is that part of information processing is performed by the body. So the idea is that if I think, this is quite apparent in working, but it's also true in grasping. If you think how I grasp this object, typically I will have this object here, and then I will move this more or less in a fit place, and there are many, so I can start from many places to take it. And then I use this loose, partially soft system, which is not controlled. So you may have seen some movie like Terminator. In my mind, when I do this operation, I don't see the coordinates of a arm moving. I don't think I don't follow all the joints coordinates of all the links that are involved and limbs that are involved. And I don't calculate mass, velocity. I don't have this. This is, you have seen in some movie, when Terminator looks and everything to see the numbers. We don't work in this way. This is the way that second wave robots work. So I have a computer which calculates everything to the highest possible level of accuracy. I do another thing. I more or less come close, and then I let the arm go down. And the fact that it goes down in a proper way is that this arm has been shaped by evolution in a proper way. So for most of the things that I have to do, and I told you the things that I had to do were to grasp fruits for the trees or from the savannah. So first from the trees, when we started to walk erect in the savannah. And this was for what, so the body has been shaped in such a way to be able to do the task. It's not that I take any possible body and I put the control on it. This is possible, and this is what we do all the time. But this is not as efficient as having something that more or less works. And that's what I do. Do I control the trajectory, calculate the trajectory with a planning algorithm, and then I precisely go there and I really take 3 points and lift the object? No. I basically let this go down like a pendulum, right? And when it is close enough, it's like the parachute of on a rocket coming back into the... When I'm close enough, then I close. But I close how? Thus, again, do I calculate all the trajectory of all the finger, of all the many joints and muscles that I have? No. My hand is shaped in this way. Actually, in this, I also have this. Right? And I close it. Most of the possible grasp that I do are okay. Why? Because this is partially soft, and because this has the right dimension for grasping the kind of fruit that my ancestors and me too we do use it to eat. So this is the point is that if I follow that approach, the second wave approach, or the approach that was followed by people building the Karakuri dolls, I should actually have very good vision and giving me the coordinates of this object, and then I should be able to calculate. First, by inverse kinematics, I calculate the movement in every angle, and I have many, and then so the robot actually, so now let me play the robot. And actually you immediately recognize a robot, right? Now, current robots. Because what does the robot do? The robot, first of all, what is this? It's an iPhone. This is not easy at all to do. And then coordinates. Probabilistic robotics, we are in the second wave. Okay, I have a point cloud. I have more or less the position. I know there is an error. And then what I do? Where is my arm? It's here. Here. While I move continuously. Robots typically, when I have nothing to do, stay in this way. Let me say, okay, another calculation, position of the palm and position of the iPhone. Rotate, and then calculate the trajectory. Okay, the trajectory will be this one. And then inverse kinematics, so I calculate by matrix calculator all the angles, and activate with my electric motors all the links. Typically I arrive here. There is a mistake. Correction. And then I say, where I have to put my fingers to be able to have a stable grasp. I do the calculation only for free. Well, I have a very good computer. And I go out. You know what happens many times? I go out and pow. Huh? So there is a completely different conceptual approach that I follow now with respect to what I've shown. This is, I was kidding, right? So this is a good way to do that. We do with most robots, but it's really a different approach. So the question is, why we build robots like on the left and not on the right? The main reason is that we don't know exactly how to do the other ones. What I mean with that? Because when I say, and this is, I just gave you the nutshell summary of the ShanghAI lecture. We will go in detail as we proceed. This is the basic idea. So I have two ways to grasp this iPhone. One is to do all the exact accurate calculation and do all the matrix calculus necessary, but now luckily it's not as difficult as it was in the past, so I can do all. And then I have this, not natural, but if you want, effective way to do a thing. I may fail to recognize this. I may fail to understand the perfect position, because if I look from here, I am a robot, so I have this stereo cameras giving me this point cloud. It can be here, but it can be here. If I change to an extreme, the typical situation of grasping is this. Pop, 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 pop. Oh. This is what we typically do. The different approach is having something very close to this. So what is this? In a standard robot is a number of pieces of steel or plastic with an electric motor. The electric motor rotation is a number which comes from my calculation. So I have many pictures which are 1000 by 1000 pixels. From this I do some calculation. I extract the images. From the images, I have an approximate position of what I want to grasp. In the database, I can recognize the object. And then here, I start to do all my calculation to move this thing. Is this arm the same of a robot arm of this, like the one that I described? So a piece of steel, an electric motor in the joint, another electric motor, and here I will have cables to give power to the electric motor and another cable to give the information to the electric motor and to get back the information about how it could rotate. Because if my electric motor is lifting something, I will have currents here because now the equilibrium condition have changed.
Fabio, you're running a bit over time here, so we're...
Yeah, I will conclude. So,
yep.
I want to conclude by saying why this is different. This is different under many respects, but mainly, I still have a rigid part because I have bones. So part of a job is the same that I have on the other thing. But then you exploit, this is soft. So, and this is good because if I don't know the exact position, if I deformate the hand, why I have all these phalanxes? Because this structure is much more flexible, so I can do mistakes. So the principle of animals, robots, of animals that we have now, is that they institutionally start from the idea that we do make mistakes. So they use the dynamics to do calculation. So this is, I don't need to know. It will fall more or less in the right place. And then by approach. So this is what we call morphological computation, which means that part of the information processing is performed by the body. And so we have two different alternative views on intelligence. One is Cognition as computation, the one that was already embedded in the Karakuri doll. The other is cognition as an emerging set of well-organized emergent processes emerging from sensory, motor, and interaction processes. Because I can do this now, but I couldn't when I was 6 months old. And my capability to grasp objects evolved, co-evolved, evolved together. My capability, my body. So my body was very small, and my hand was very roughly controlled. My nerves were rough, my muscles were weak. And then as my brain has grown together my body. This is something that is very difficult to do, but this is what happens in nature. If you check in the repository of a ShanghAI lecture, we check for Minoru Asada's guest lecture. Actually, there has been a project in Japan where they have tried to simulate this, meaning you build a very small robot, baby robot, then you simulate the next 6 months, then you build another robot, and you evolve the neural networks controlling the robot. But it's a different approach. So you can have a body designed divided by the mind, and then put this computing system, algorithm, complex algorithm above, or you have this emergent approach, self-organization. The third wave will come from this second kind of approach. I don't pretend it is exactly the same thing. So there when you are in a phase, a scientific phase like this one, so when you are looking for something really new, typically you have different approaches. Now, the typical example you may have heard of is that at the beginning of quantum mechanics, they had the two approaches, one based on partial differential equation, and that was Schrödinger equation. But there also was the approach based on matrix calculus, which was the Heisenberg approach. And at some point, they proved that they are equivalent. So in this kind of phases, and we could be in a phase for robotics similar to quantum mechanics in the 10 or 20 of the past centuries, there are many proposals, many ways to do the thing. What I don't doubt is that I think this will be, this is a glimpse on the next lecture, that has to be something emergent from sensory motor control, something that allows to control soft structure, or better, structure which are partially hard and partly soft. As told, there are people working on this. Some will be guest lecturers when we will be so lucky to be able to have a connection. But I mean, today was a special case, I hope. And thank you for attending today, and see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, thanks.
So I think that we can finish now, and bye everybody, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye, Fabio. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, bye-bye.